On the night of Saturday, June 10th, 1983, I had a dream which was to be the catalyst for regaining myself and recapturing Billy before it was too late. I was in an ice skating rink doing an ice ballet performance with Baryshnikov. We were a hit with the whole world and the whole troupe, but I decided to leave that arena for a reason I'm not sure, but it had to do with doing the right thing, but being in the wrong arena, in that arena. So I left. I found myself driving a bulldozer down a narrow road on my way to a construction site. The bulldozer was very large and wide and had a bucket lift in the front that could be raised to go faster and lowered to go slower. I was also towing a smaller bulldozer to this construction site where it was my job to build a bridge. Many people were waiting for me to get there, and hordes of people were following me on foot. It was my responsibility to get there quickly and build this bridge. They were all depending on me so they could get across to the other side. So I was trying to move fast because it was urgent. Then I realized that it was not very safe to be going so fast. The road was so narrow and it was tree-lined, and that it would be terrible to get into an accident. Besides, all the people were walking behind me, and they were having to keep up. They were having a hard time to keep up. The road, by the way, reminded me of a road going from Mexico City out to Puebla. Reaching the construction site, I realized that I had to start the bridge from the other side. You just know these things in dreams. And I couldn't get across. So I got down off the bulldozer and climbed down the muddy banks to the ravine and crossed the river by jumping from rock to rock. It must not have been very deep on that side or swift. I think at that point it was more of a mud wash than a river. On the other side, hordes of people were waiting for me to build this bridge so that they could cross back. A man who seemed to be in charge emerged in long black robes and a tall hat. I asked him how I was supposed to do this job when I couldn't get to the other side. I told him I had all my equipment over here. I wanted to get started, and he said they had all been waiting for me. He said, "Why don't you just use the old bridge?" And he pointed over to his right, my left. "It's very wide and it's very old and rickety, but if you are very careful and you zero in on the exact center of the bridge, you will be able to cross quite safely. If you don't zero in so that your very wide bulldozer doesn't hang over the edge too much or veer off to one side, you will be able to get to the other side. You won't go over the edge. Just zero in." He repeated that phrase several times on the very center. So I was confident and fine with these instructions. Okay. He also said that I would have to overcompensate to the left a bit because I was towing a small bulldozer, and since I had to turn right to get to the old bridge, if I didn't immediately overcompensate left, I would continue in the right direction, and the tracks would just continue to walk right over the edge. So I crossed back only to find a man in the driver's seat of my bulldozer. This male figure was in the person of my boss's father, my husband, and some unknown, it was some universal figure, some male figure of authority. I told him I had gotten all the instructions and that I knew what to do. All I had to do was to zero in, and it was my job to drive across the old bridge to begin the work. He said, "Okay, just let me show you how to start it up." I said, "I know how to start up the bulldozer. I've been driving it. I've been pulling this little one for miles." He said, "Okay, well, let me just give you some quick start here and show you how to pump the choke." I said, "I know how to do all of this." He said, I'll give it over to you in just a second." Well, and he stayed in the driver's seat. By this time, the person was clearly in the person of Glenn. So I told him what the man said about zeroing in on the center of the old bridge and having to overcompensate to the left. Glenn said, "Okay, okay." I climbed up beside him on the arm of the seat to his right and sat with my knees just inside the overhead protective cage. I was rather penned in as the cage came just to my thighs and I was behind it for the most part. The opening was arched and I held onto that upright portion. Glenn steered to the right to begin crossing toward the old bridge. I reminded him to overcompensate to the left as he went across the bridge so he could zero in and not keep moving toward the right. We had to overcompensate left because we were pulling the smaller bulldozer, and it added mass and weight behind us, which would not correct to the center unless given more impetus left. So Glenn did overcompensate finally, a little bit only, but it was too little, too late. I saw that we were going over the right edge, which we did. Then we began to fall. I saw the water coming up at us. It was deep. It was the longest fall I've ever experienced. I had time to observe, to think, to decide on options, and to choose. I thought about whether to try to make a jump for it or not. No, I may get trapped by the bulldozer itself as it hit the water on top of me. I decided to ride it down, prepare myself for the impact, and get my breath so that I could wiggle out from behind the cage once in the water and let the water flush me out. I took deep breaths, at least 6. There was plenty of time, and I could take another breath. With each breath, I had time to think. All the way down, I took deep breaths. This was the longest fall I've ever experienced. In fact, I thought about how curious it was that I should have this much time. Yet, it was also frightening because I knew I would have only one chance to get clear. Hold my breath underwater, and then dive down and up and away from the wreckage, then swim for the opposite shore. We hit just as I took the last breath and wiggled out from behind the cage. I was underwater only a short time and came up and swam to the opposite shore, just as I had planned, and pulled myself up the muddy rocks and near the edge of the bank. At the top of the bank. All the people who were waiting there were smiling at me. I was safe. No fear, no discomfort. A female reporter came over with her notebook. She told me she was from the press to cover the accident and asked me to recount my story. Had all witnessed. I said, I am Billy Hooper of Hooper and Associates. She asked about Glenn, and I said, I don't know, but he's on the other side over there, and I'm sure he's fine. I was pointing back to the shore from where we started. Then I woke up.